So what would happen is you'd wake up in the morning and you'd sort of sit up in your sleeping bag. Heartbeat is raised, blood pressure is raised, and you'd be struggling to breathe. And as you climb out of this -40 sleeping bag and you pull an inner of your boot onto your feet, you'd need to sit back and relax before you can put the outer on. And so getting out of bed can take 20 minutes just before you can crawl out of this double-skinned tent as you unzip and finally get your way out of there. Hard work. You're starting to get a little bit of nausea. You're dealing with headaches. I don't have a huge amount of weight to lose, as you can probably see. But in the 2 months that I was away, I lost 10 kilograms. Folks, if any of you are concerned about your weight, I would seriously recommend an Everest expedition. You are guaranteed to lose weight. There's absolutely no doubt about it. You will lose weight. A lot of it, of course, happens in the last week or two, and we're going to see a little bit of live footage of that a little later. Of course, now temperatures are down to -25, getting down to -30, and things are pretty inhospitable. Yeah, we're playing cards in tents, and we're having conversations, and we're watching weather, and there's an intensity about a lot of what we do. And as we leave Advanced Base Camp for the first time, we're going to start getting onto some serious climbing terrain where we're going to need to make use of some artificial equipment. We're going to put on a harness. We're going to have some crampons on our feet. And we're going to clip into fixed lines and negotiate this icy head wall, which in places is 80 degrees steep. And we're going to be climbing this thing right up to 7,000 meters, a place called the North Col. But the views start opening up. It's just amazing. As higher you get, you become awestruck. And the views just absolutely take your breath away. I'm sure that most of you in this part of the world are familiar with things like crampons, but it's these 12 spiky things that get tied onto the bottom of a boot and allow you to stand on steep terrain without sliding. And suddenly, as you start entering this vertical world, you have to start thinking about all sorts of things. Your water bottle, which is now inside your down suit, is tied to loops that are attached to your suit. Because if you take this thing out and want to have a drink, and you drop that bottle, suddenly it will just slide away, and that could become potentially a very, very difficult situation. If you took a mitt off your hand and dropped it and didn't have a spare, that could become a life-threatening situation. So attention to detail becomes vital. As you head up the North Col, there are a couple of little challenges that you need to face, and they're mainly in the form of crevasses. I don't know if any of you have had I don't know if I should say pleasure, but the possibility of walking across one of these things. And what the Sherpas do is they lay these aluminium ladders across these crevasses. And the scary thing about this is that you actually have to look down this thing as you're crossing it. And here's one of my fellow climbing buddies, Andy, actually looking down this crevasse, and the front points of his crampons are just touching the front rung of the ladder, the back points are just touching the other, and you have to look down because that's the way you balance your way across. Talk about facing your fears. I mean, it's the only way to do it, and I think that we've so often heard that cliche, face your fears and they're bound to disappear, but it is the case. It is amazing how that works. Of course, when you get onto these kinds of ladders, there are 4 of them that are tied together with old pieces of rope, and these things move as you negotiate them. They move to the side, a couple of inches either way, and they move up and down. So you've got to get into a bit of a dance as you negotiate these things. And we went up and down them 4, 5, 6 times as part of our acclimatization. But the first time you see that ladder, you think to yourself, There's no ways. There's no ways I can negotiate that. So it's amazing what the mountain throws at you. And of course, once you're on the North Pole, we got thrown meters of snow at us all of the time. And of course, what makes that hard is that you wake up in the morning and you've got to dig yourself out of this lot, and that can take an hour. And when you're getting such little air and everything is so laboured, it's really incredibly hard work. But as we leave the North Pole, our routing is going to take us up this north face. And you'll see there's a climber, there's a climber, there's a climber. And we're going to get up to Camp 2, which is somewhere in the rocks there, Camp 3 up there, and slowly we're going to head up towards the summit. And that's the north ridge, and Camp 2, Camp 3, and so we're headed. And you have this incredible face on your right-hand side. It drops for 10,000 feet down to the central Rongbuk Glacier, and you suddenly become aware of how incredibly steep everything becomes. There's the North Pole in the background. We've just left it, and we're heading up the snow slope towards Camp 2. As you look down onto the tents of the North Pole, just another view, and you realize how precarious you're living. You know, the possibility of some of those huge chunks of ice just falling away as it starts warming up during the day is ever present. And you cannot take your eye off the safety guard for 1 minute. I can't emphasize attention to detail too much. You know, we had lists of things, and we heard that from Tom earlier today about this checklist. And when you get up onto the steep terrain, and your mind starts becoming a little fuzzy, because with deprived oxygen, you're not thinking that clearly. And so we could not, on our own judgment and our own mental capacities as we moved up, without checklists. And the checklists contain things like satellite phone, spare pair of mitts, water bottle, head torch, spare head torch, South African flag, phone numbers. I wrote down my home phone number and a studio phone number and some friends' numbers who I hoped to call from the summit, because I could not guarantee that I would remember my own home number. And so we dealt with all of these back in base camp. We didn't rely on getting up onto the mountain and then suddenly running around thinking, oh my, I left that behind, or I forgot to pay attention to that. Tremendous lesson, I think, that we can apply to so much of what we do in life. It's just to be more methodical and to... I'm a great one for lists. I think they really work incredibly well. It kind of focuses me in many, many ways. And so this is Camp 2. It's a scary place. It's tents are pitched on any little flat slab that the Sherpas can find. And we're on pretty much on a 45-degree slope. And to give you a sense of what it's like to be inside the tent looking out, there you go. You've got this incredible north face of Everest sliding down beneath you. And needless to say, once you crawl into that tent, you're going to spend the night there. This is not a place you want to go be walking around at night. You're not going to get out of there and think, well, I'm going to go and see how my climbing buddy's doing 50 meters down.